Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. It is our pleasure to welcome Mr. Rajiv Bhatia, former ambassador of Myanmar and a distinguished fellow of Foreign Studies program at the Gateway House, Mumbai. Our subject is recent instability in Myanmar even after elections. The December 25 elections held in Myanmar are widely being seen as a sham, not free and fair, and followed by a lot of, about 6,000 people are reported to have been killed at least. About 20 million people need humanitarian assistance. The junta has been, conducting airstrikes even on public, and there are about three resistance groups at least: the National Unity Government, the People's Defense Force, and the Arakan Army, which is reported to have taken over large tracts of territory in the Mongdo region, which is between Bangladesh and Myanmar's Rakhine state. And the Indian Army carried out at least 2 attacks inside Myanmar against the United Liberation Front of Ahom Ulfa and the National NSCN, National Socialist Council of Nagaland groups. Things don't seem to be going too smoothly there. I will request Mr. Bhatia to throw light as there is he's been watching. Not only has he been a former, is he a former ambassador of Myanmar, but he's been watching what has been happening there. Over to you, Mr. Bhatia.
Thank you very much, Colonel Bhat. Such a pleasure to be invited once again to this prestigious platform of South Asia Monitor, and particularly to have a discussion or a conversation with you. Thank you very much also for your crisp introduction of the topic. I think it's important to discuss the political, security, economic and external situation of such an important neighbor to our east, Myanmar. Myanmar, as you know, is known as the gateway for India to Southeast Asia. It is a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. It's a country which has enjoyed extremely close relations with India over the decades and centuries. And therefore, any opportunity where we can honestly and frankly discuss what is going on in Myanmar and how it is impacting on India is of interest to both of us, but I hope also to our audience as well. Now, shifting to the heart of the topic, which you spelled out as the instability in Myanmar despite the elections, I would like to make a couple of points right in the beginning. Myanmar has been quite used to be governed under military rule for a long time. That doesn't mean that people accept military rule as such, but I'm just stating a basic fact that since its independence in 1948, much of the time military has been in power, and there have been only short periods when democracy or limited democracy has been in operation. Now, at this time, we can see the last military coup took place in 2021, and since then, military has been directly in power. This time, the coup triggered serious political discontent, which eventually turned into very violent conflict between the resistance and the military. And only when a kind of a stalemate began to develop, that the military decided to go on for this exercise of elections. Now, you're quite right in saying that the critics and the resistance view this as a sham election. On the other hand, obviously, the narrative presented by the military government is that it was an election which has been organized under very adverse circumstances, and we have been very successful. And they have been projecting two or three basic facts. One, that it was done in three phases. It was not done in one go because of the political and logistical and security issues. It was the polling was done on 28th December, 11th January, and then 25th January. They also point out that this was done in terms of three different number of townships. First phase, 102, second phase, 100, and third phase, 61. I think it is generally claimed that roughly 50% to 65% of the country is under military's control. And by whatever figure you take, roughly 50% or 33% is under the opposition control. So you can see that elections have not covered all the areas, but they have covered probably the majority part of the result was exactly along expected lines. 72% of the seats in the parliament have been won by USDP, which is called the King's Party, or the party established or floated by the military. So in other words, the future rulers are going to be people having allegiance directly or indirectly to the military. So this is where we are. Will there be stability or instability? We will naturally discuss it in detail, but I just wanted to set out the full political context of our discussion now. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. The other disturbing aspects are, or you can say developments, are that ever since the disturbances in Bangladesh, there is no doubt about a very strong American presence, not only in Bangladesh but in Myanmar also. In Bangladesh, all I can throw light on is that there was at least one American officer, United States Army officer, who was reported killed in a Dhaka hotel. And there are unconfirmed reports of about 17 Americans being killed in Dhaka. But what I'm trying to say is that there is this American presence is not only in Bangladesh, it is in Myanmar also now. This, you see, is a bit disturbing for India, at least. Whatever be the circumstances, we have been having relations with the military junta till things were okay. We try to have good relations even with the elected government there, Suki's government there. But now, with whatever, there are events which occurred in Manipur, which have an effect of the Kuki population. Kukis they originally from Myanmar. The Meiteis, the Meitei kingdom, they were the last to to be conquered by the British, and it's after that and the Meitei kingdom was pretty large. It was not as big as just Manipur is today. It stretched right up to even Kachar. I think there was a lot of movement of Meiteis in Kukis inside Manipur by the British, and then you've heard of all the disturbances that have occurred there. And now the latest is that there's a state of a demand for cookie land also. Now, with such things, one wonders. I'm sure all this couldn't be happening without with just without some call it the deep state of America. Your comments on this, Mr. Bhatia.
Thank you very much, Colonel. But you probably are better informed about some of the issues that you have raised. But let me first connect to what I was trying to put out, and I'll come to your question as well. The issue is as to how the elections in Myanmar have been perceived by the external players, and I think that is where we can bring in the US and possibly Bangladesh situation as well. So in terms of elections, I think it's important to note the West has been a big advocate of democracy in Myanmar for a long time. But in the last 4 or 5 years, I noticed that the Western countries, that is the EU and the US, have reduced their interest in Myanmar. This is a cause of great pain and disappointment to the democracy activists in Myanmar, but this is a plain fact. Particularly in the last 1 year, America's assistance also to various institutions, including probably the national unity government, has been reduced. And so obviously the pinch is being felt. And as far as Europe is concerned, they have been so deeply involved in their own challenges and problems, mainly Ukraine and the Russian threat, that they are not able to take the kind of interest they took in Myanmar affairs earlier. So in short, the US and EU are less interested, but very clear that these elections are largely lacking credibility, and therefore they need not be appreciated or supported. On the other hand, there is a group of countries which have basically welcomed the elections, and that obviously group includes Russia, China, Belarus, and some of the Indo-China countries, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand. At the individual national level, they have basically supported the elections. Yet, on the other hand, ASEAN has been very clear that these elections are not important. They have not endorsed or welcomed them. And they keep saying that our policy is centering around what they call the 5-point consensus. In that consensus, you remember, ASEAN had advised Myanmar after the coup to first stop violence, and second, start national dialogue among stakeholders. Since that did not happen and they simply directly jumped to the election, ASEAN is not happy. And in that light, very quickly, in 2 points, I think we should also mention that India has taken not a very clear-cut position on the elections. On the one hand, India deals with the military government without any difficulty. But on the other hand, India has not really issued any strong or clear statement after Prime Minister Modi's statement back at the BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok that India favors free, fair, and credible elections in Myanmar. It has not said whether or not they were free, fair, and credible after they were over. Then press reports made a big song and dance about the presence of one of your senior colleagues, Lieutenant General Arun Sahni, the retired army officer who was present at the time of the elections, and he was projected as the observer from India. But New Delhi made it clear that he did not have any official status. So let us say India's position remains somewhat unclear. India's policy is clear. We work with the military government, but we favor democracy in Myanmar, and we are willing to extend moral, diplomatic, and political support for that cause. So, in that light, now coming back once again to the US, I have also been researching and reading a lot of reports about American interest in Myanmar. Reports say they are very interested in what is going on in the Rakhine state. They also indicate they are very interested in what's going on in Kachin state, particularly from the viewpoint of critical minerals. And thirdly, they certainly have been highlighting that given their deep activities in Bangladesh, they wanted at one stage even to open a humanitarian corridor from Bangladesh, Chittagong, all the way to the Rakhine state. It never happened. And now, of course, in Bangladesh, the situation has changed completely. A new government is about to take over, and we will have to re-examine, revisit that topic. So my final point here is that because the international community is divided, it is fragmented on Myanmar, it is unable to take any effective unified position. And on the other hand, the political elite and the political constituencies in Myanmar are also divided and fragmented. And as a result, a kind of a stalemate continues there as well. So, given the combination of these two factors, we are not very optimistic that any big or positive changes might take place in Myanmar in the near future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatia. You brought out, you clarified also a lot of issues. Frankly, one, as a person who's, who was there in Manipur for 3 years, and I had the opportunity of raising Defense Ministry's cell of public relations there, and in those 3 years, one had the opportunity of visiting the Manipur Myanmar border quite often, and including going to More. One has seen the proximity, the cultural connections that we've had. And it at times seems a pity that how things are how things are turning out to be there. Way back, if you recall, Mr. George Fernandez, even in the time when he was the defense minister, he had the democracy movement's members staying in his house. He'd given them. I mean, we've been involved in let's say that a lot of us are well-wishers as far as Myanmar is concerned, and it's a pity to see things, and we supported the junta. I know that in the past we've even given them this thing, weapons and hardware, and they were their help in or support in our chasing the northeast insurgent turned terrorist groups of the Nagas, the Assamese, the Ulfa, and the Meitei groups. The support was not solid. It was, in fact, a sham support. The moment we entered, they'd inform them, and these chaps would scatter. It's only in 25 last year there were 2 successful attacks by Indian Army inside Myanmar on these group of Ulfa and NSCN. But how do you think we in India can be of some meaningful, substantial support assistance at this stage?
Thank you very much. I think what you say is enlightening, and of course, I fully respect your experience of having served the Indian Army at the border. You have deep knowledge, and we all need to learn from it. Let's talk a little bit more about India-Myanmar relations. And this certainly has to start from the border region. There is no question that the ethnic affinities, the geographical contiguity, the historical legacy, and the day-to-day connections that exist between the peoples on both sides of the border are very, very important. Fundamentally, from the viewpoint of the Indian government, all that we want is that the movement of people, of goods, of drugs and medicines, and any other item, should be properly, regulated. That is, the movement should be for positive purposes, but not for negative purposes, not for smuggling,
Yes,
not for
drugs
export
also.
of contraband items, not for terrorists moving up and down, not
Yes.
for encouraging international crime, etc.
Yes,
And
yes.
so there is this very serious challenge of how to encourage the good flow and discourage and stop the bad flow. Now, in this was a difficult proposition even when before the coup, when things were normal. Now they are far from normal because in the military or armed tussle between the military, the Myanmar military on one side, and the ethnic resistance on the other side, military has lost control over much of the India-Myanmar border on the Myanmar side. So now you have a new player, but it is not one player, there are multiple players. So you have KIA, you have Chin, you have the other private voluntary forces, and then you have the Arakan army. There are at least half a dozen main players on the Myanmar side. So the challenge for India is how to open and conduct discussions with them, find out what they need and how much and what we possibly can give them. And our limitations are very, very clear. And at the same time, we have to deal with them in such a manner that state to state, government to government relations between Delhi and Naypyidaw are not adversely affected. And that also is very important because we know, and I'm bringing in the larger strategic and geopolitical factor here, since the coup, China's impact and influence in Myanmar has grown. This is a matter of great concern to India.
They're strongly supporting the junta.
Exactly. Therefore, I think it's very important for India to balance the practical needs of the border with the larger strategic need for us to maintain good, positive relations with the military government. That is the reason why India adopts this twofold Burma policy or Myanmar policy of trying to deal with the government of the day and yet keep projecting that at the end of the day we want democracy in Myanmar, but it is the responsibility of the people of Myanmar to bring democracy. It is not India's job to export democracy to Myanmar. So this is where we are. I think it's a difficult track to travel, but this is the only track available to India.
No, I think you put it very, very succinctly, Mr. Bhatia. And it's not easy for us, and we have tried to be proper in the past. We are still, and being proper now it's not so easy with because I'll say that if we were able to attack these two, enter Myanmar and attack these two groups, which are being, Pakistan is trying. They had Pakistan support earlier during the days of BNP being in power in Bangladesh. From that time onwards, and Mr. This failed Marshal Munir has been trying to his best, because he can't do much against Indian Army. He's been trying to renew those his connections and the Pakistan Army's connections with these groups to try and keep us so that we've been able to do that. But as you say, it's it's something we would like to have see democracy there. And we are very right, it has to happen with the people there also. The Myanmarese public. Again, it's not easy for them with they're being pulled apart. 50% of the state, I think, is under
absolutely. So just let me bring in two more points to bring or inject some optimism here.
Please.
One is that in comparison to the period 21 to say about 23, 24, when the violence was quite heavy and widespread in Myanmar, my impression is that the level of violence is low now in the last few months. It has not ended. You spoke about airstrikes. Sometimes they take place even now. But the violence level is low in Myanmar, which means that there is a stalemate on the field. And now that the elections have taken place and new rulers, even though they may be controlled by the military, will be in operation, they might create a new, atmosphere to begin some kind of discussions with the opposition, and they might succeed to some extent. So this is a possibility we should keep in view. And the other is the optimism coming from the change in Bangladesh. Imagine had the elections led to Jamaat's outright victory, the whole area would have become very difficult for others to manage. Now that you have a moderate center-right government of Prime Minister to be Tariq Rahman coming into the picture, it is possible that Bangladesh would also try to follow a pragmatic policy towards Myanmar, as indeed hopefully towards India. So in that sense, India and Bangladesh working together and this new so-called democratic government emerging in Naypyidaw, it just might bring a little bit more stability than we have experienced so far. This is the projection I would like to put to you, and I hope you would perhaps go along with it.
No, certainly this. I think it's some light at the end of the tunnel. This development of late Khalida Zia's son taking over. Although the BNP had given us enough trouble when it was in power earlier, but today things are different. After all the mess that has been presided upon by Mr. Yunus. One can only hope that things are better there. And yes, what you have said is a ray of hope which India should try its best to catalyze in whichever way it can. Without we've never stepped on toes of our neighbors, but
you are absolutely right. I think we have always thought first of the people of Myanmar, and we should find every avenue to remain connected with them, whether it is through just tourism or through think tanks and universities or through business and other means, because the people-to-people connect is very, very important. I wanted to share with you that when I was serving as an ambassador, as the ambassador of India in Myanmar, I found that in a country which is largely Buddhist, there was a great aspiration for many, many people to come and visit India and see all the Buddhist sites which are world famous. So there is that connection.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. That's always been there. After all, India is the home of Buddhism. It's Buddhism. It's here that it began, and even in the Northeast, there you cannot. It's very palpable to see the kind of the kind of attraction that old Buddhist places have for people in the region of other states as well as foreigners.
And my last point, if you allow me, is this, by way of a constructive suggestion, India's Myanmar policy affects India's Northeast region directly.
Certainly.
And this is where we need to hold as many outreach events as possible in order to project the rationale of India's Myanmar policy. I'm afraid it is not adequately understood there by our own people. If we can do something actively, this will be a good investment.
You're very right there. You're very right there, Mr. Bhatia. And this is a suggestion which must be worked upon. Those of us who write, we will certainly be trying to put this across, right, or whenever we get an opportunity to speak about. No, I must thank you for a lot of very important points which you brought out today, and we must of course keep our fingers on the pulse of what is happening there and look forward for a discussion sometime in the future again. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatia.
I thank you, Colonel Bhat, for sharing your knowledge and, of course, your curiosity about various aspects. And we have had a very good conversation. I thank Sam and you once again. Have a good day.
All the best.
Thank you.